Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'd like to kick off today's meeting, thanking the group that helped put together the report, with special thanks to Ellen Flynn Giles and Barbara Lawson for all of their heavy lifting to help us get to what we sent out the other day. It was a collaborative effort. I think we took into account a lot of the dialogue that has occurred over the past 4 months with this group, a very active group, which is great. We've been able to hear from a lot of the different county agencies and other various interested parties to have a really good discussion about where we are as a county from our fiscal health and where we expect to go over the next 2 years. So we sent the draft out the other night for everybody to review. I think it was a little later than I had promised, so I apologize for that, but just a little extra work to get it together this year. And as we look at it, from a framework standpoint, it pretty much lines up with the order of how we've written the report over the last few years. And starting with an executive summary, moving into recommendations, and then getting into the details around kind of the economic climate. The recommendations are those that we all voted on at our last full meeting, and those are around the expected budget increase that we think we'll see in fiscal year 2022, and the long run budget projections for the 5 years thereafter, as well as the debt authorization recommendation. And I think we had good dialogue around that last time, around each of those issues, probably more around the debt authorization than some of the increases. We were relying on the team for those. And on the authorization, I remind the committee it's a recommendation. I think we're trying to take a conservative stance given what the unknowns are out there right now for us, and all of the things that are going on within the economy and the fiscal health and well-being of the county and the state and the national government today. So I think the committee was prudent in its recommendations. We shared, as a writing group, we shared those thoughts with the county executive the other day, and he was open to the dialogue, understands the situation that we all are in, and hopes that as he works with the other elected officials, that we can find a good, solid way forward. So with that, I'll open up to any dialogue that anybody wants to have. Before I do that, is there anything anyone from the writing committee would like to share? And that's Todd, Barbara, Ellen, Milton, Leonardo, Dr. Clinch, and Josh, who were on all the calls with us to work through putting this document together. Is there anything that anybody from that group would like to add? And go right ahead.
Steve?
Yes, Barbara.
I'd like to thank you for your leadership. You're really a terrific listener, and I think that the dialogue with everybody on the writing committee was quite in depth and succinct in where we wanted to go with the report. So I thank you for that leadership.
Thank you.
I would add a shout out to Ellen and Barbara for editing our ideas into something that looks good. So thank you.
They were very raw when we started, so it's great to see them come together that way. So thank you, Richard, for saying that. Okay. Does anybody else on our only agenda item today is to discuss the report, vote on the report, and this is our last meeting as a committee. I think we'll be presenting, a small group of us will be presenting this to the council in a week or so, and having some dialogue, and there's also discussion about setting up some community community discussions around it so we can continue to educate our community about everything that we saw, heard, and talked about. So I open up the floor to any comments or suggestions.
Steve, this is Darius.
Hi. Hello. How
All
are
right,
you?
so I'm looking at chart 6 and chart 7, and I know the difference is, but I think that chart 7 really is misleading without more explanations. I think it does include federal money in there, federal and state money, whereas chart 6 is really about the local funding. So I'm not sure if chart 7 adds a lot of value to the discussion, and it might increase the confusion since the numbers are about 50% higher on a per pupil current spending, which I suspect probably includes both state and federal. So I don't think it needs to be in there. It just doesn't really. It probably creates a bit of confusion without context.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that, on chart 7? And that is the top 10 largest school districts by enrollment and per pupil current spending chart from the U.S. Census Bureau that is on page 12 of the report.
I think, Dr. Rana, your question is that those two are different. What's on the top is per pupil county spending. The one at the bottom is total spending, right?
Yeah, except if you don't understand that it's federal, state, and I mean the issue really is the county spending. This is the county spending affordability, and I think this was used for illustrative purposes to show basically that we're a very we spend a lot of money on a per pupil basis, except without the context that it does include all the spending that goes into it. It might be a bit misleading. So we look at Howard County. In the census one, it's 15,000. We look at ours, it's about 10,000 or so.
So maybe you need a clarification, put a note saying that's all funding, something like that.
Yeah, that's fine. But the question, it doesn't really, within Maryland, we're the third highest. I think it's sufficient. I'm not sure if adding this chart and actually extra words explaining why it's important. That's just my opinion, but
Understood. Does anybody else have any other opinions on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Steve, for a second.
Sure.
I think the relevance of it is, whereas it's true we're third in Maryland, to be fifth in the country in total spending is I think a piece of information that's quite relevant, because that's a remarkably high level. And if you just look at, and all you have is the context of Maryland and where we are in Maryland, you might think that we're lagging somehow in the nation, or that maybe we're the third in Maryland, and there's 100 other districts in the country, in other states, that spend more than we do. And I think that information of knowing that we're fifth in the country is quite relevant.
So your point is it brings context to the overall spending on a per pupil basis for where we are.
except it includes the federal spending, which,
No,
for example, it moves Baltimore City from fourth from the bottom to third in the nation on a per pupil basis. So without the context of it, this includes a lot of federal money.
No.
It's misleading because we're not, we as Howard County aren't necessarily paying directly those funds. Those funds come from basically federal appropriations, which we are paying into. But the idea that, for us, in terms of Howard County, in terms of our spending affordability committee, we're really looking at that $10,600 per pupil as spending, as that's coming, out of our taxes, both income and property, whereas the chart 7 really includes the federal spending. And then it makes it, then you look at Baltimore City at fourth from the bottom in Maryland, but it's really third in the nation in terms of per pupil. So, without the context of this includes a significant amount of federal spending, it does sort of distort the picture a bit and looks like we're, so I would just say it's either.
Yeah, I understand your point. Ellen, you'll have something you want to add?
To be honest, the amount of federal money that the school system gets is incidental. It's way, way down. We get 25% from the state 75% from the county. The amount that it's less than 1%. Now, did it come through the feds, through the state? Yes, but it's really only in terms of reporting those things state and county. So that's why it's relevant for Maryland, and it's certainly relevant national. But there isn't the separate federal funding, except for a year like this with CARES and stuff, has never been anything that you can really pay attention to. And in Baltimore City, it's a little bit different because of the fact that city services are chunked in there. So that distorts Baltimore County no matter what you're looking at. If you look across the state and across the nation, it's still on a per pupil basis high.
Well, I think Dr. Ronnie's got a really good point. I mean, it does lack context, right? It's just a chart in there. It shows, and if to a reader looking at it and go, okay, well, I'm looking at one chart above that says 10,000, one chart below that says 15,000. Which one am I supposed to look at and understand? What's the purpose of this chart being in there and how it supports it? I think that I think it's more important to add context and leave the chart than it is to remove the chart. And it's more, I think the tone we were trying, tone's probably not the right, but I think the point we were trying to make in here is that there is a commitment in this community to continue to fund our school system at a high level. Unfortunately, we're in a growth situation that requires that we're more judicious about how we spend our additional dollars, and we have to make sure that we don't overspend in one area, which then takes away from other areas that have significant needs and potentially have to require cuts in other areas. So we're just trying to say, even if we continue to fund at the same level, we're still funding at a pretty high level on a per capita basis, per pupil basis in the state, but also in the country. So let's just have a little bit of context in that discussion when we say we need to spend more money. So my recommendation is we leave it in, but we add some language to bring context because it does look a little kind of hanging out there. So thank you for that. Any other comments? That was a great one.
Stephen, should I go through with my email? I just want to highlight several points I made in the email.
Dr. Wu sent an email to me with some comments, and I told him we would talk about those in the context of the committee. I will start that with saying the committee has already voted on the debt burden and your comments around the inability for that to fund anything. I don't think that that's open for discussion in here because the committee's voted on that. But anything else that you would like to share, please do.
Okay, thank you. You give me the opportunity, and I really appreciate the committee to put everything together. I think my point is really so that the county and collaborate with the state and put forward 3 projects, which it has been going on for a while now. And I don't know how it will happen if we said the county does not have any money and the project has been contracted already. So what will that happen, right? So I have really serious kind of doubt what the community.
So, Dr. Wu, you're bringing up the debt authorization recommendation again, which has been voted on by the committee. I'm not going to open that back up for voting again.
Okay, sure.
I will say that, and I don't know if it's a misunderstanding on our part or a misunderstanding on your part, but from our discussion, and I think we got into it in pretty good detail with the committee, if a project is started and a contract is signed, the full authorization for that project is approved. The full amount of bonds may not have been issued. And the difference between future issuance and future authorizations that's 2 different things. So if a full project has been authorized but not issued, that's different than a project has been just issued a portion and they didn't fully authorize it. So Holly, just real quick so we can kind of put this aside. If we said we're going to build $100 million school and we've signed a contract for that, we've gotten authorization for all of that, even if we haven't issued the bonds for all of that, correct?
Right, because I think the contract can only be signed based on the amount authorized, not what's predicting the future. I believe that's it.
And so an authorization, and the reason we have almost $400 million in authorized yet unissued bonds is because we don't issue our bonds up front. We issue them as we go, correct?
Yeah, the issuance, there's a lagging because usually you have authorized, but issuance is really based on when you actually spend down with construction. And then, so that's usually there's a lagging.
So, and last year the county authorized $75 million in new bonds, but issued somewhere in the neighborhood of 125 to 130 million.
Yes, and that issuance sum was attributed prior year and the year before's
Exactly.
authorization.
So Dr. Wu, do you understand those pieces?
Sure, sure. So,
Okay.
so thank you for the opportunity, right? I think the other
Absolutely.
point is that, and HCPS has been really aligned. When you look at the amount we requested, probably pretty high. At the same time, we understand that realistically, we're not able to get all the funding from the county, right? So we keep really aligned what do we get, and then with the reality in the school system. Unfortunately, because the student growth is dramatic every year over the past like 10 years, right? So, and the money is not catching up. So we keep reducing spending really by eliminating positions and increasing class size over the years, almost every year in the last several years, and then cutting programs. I
Dr. Wu,
think
can I ask you a question about what you just said?
Mm-hmm.
So you understand that the request that has come in this year is higher
Yes.
than you'll probably get, but you understand that the reality is that you won't get what you requested for. So
Yes.
why is there a gap between the request and the reality?
Because we don't have enough money, right? So everybody knows that.
So and just some kind of back of the envelope numbers. If the county has always funded above maintenance of effort, which is the state mandate for growth that we would need to do to cover the per pupil cost of the previous year on. And Ellen, please correct me if I'm wrong. On as I know you will on previous on previous growth, growth that's coming in on top of. And so the county has always funded above that level. And maybe before the time that I've been on the committee, they haven't. If the county wouldn't have funded above that level, the funding would be significantly lower than it is today, because we wouldn't have funding on top of funding on top of funding. And we might not have the same operating tightness that we see, but we probably would, because we'd spend it somewhere else. And if we look at where the school system was supposed to be this year, it was supposed to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 additional students enrolled going into the fiscal year 21, and enrollment was actually down 1,500 students. So isn't that a swing of about 2,200 students that the county has funded on top of what was necessary? So I'm confused as to why there would be a need for even more money.
So I think there are two misunderstandings, right? The first part is
that's $20 million.
So the first part, like in the past, when we founded the school system, there's a lag, right? So when we found it, and the student number actually is more than 800 to 1,000.
I'll give you that.
Right? There's a lag, right? That means so the funding money actually is not in funding the whole student population. It's 800 to 1,000 students less than the required, right? If we use the MLE, right? So people. Yep. So you can see that means every year we're catching up. Every year we're catching up, but we never caught up.
It also means that every year you're catching up, so you could plan for it, right?
No, there's no way we can catch that up, because this increase is just too much. That's the difficulty, right? And then this year is unique, right? Because we got to decrease the student number, right? And 1,500. So, but at the same time, that means next year we may get, if the growth come back and every student come back, we'll get like compared to this year, we'll get like maybe 3,000 new students, right?
Mhm.
Because the growth will come back. Every year, in general, we got 800 more than previous year, 500, 800, or
But we didn't
1,000.
this year, and we don't know that we're going to next year.
I think that is something we should hold firm confirmation that our school system is great. Our parents will put their children back. I think we should have that belief. We should believe our school system. We're doing a great job, even there's some bumps during the virtual learning. But eventually, I believe our students and parents will come back when everything comes back to normal. If we don't build that in our assumption, I think we're going to make a mistake, and we will make the situation much more difficult.
So if we look at all of the, and you sat through, I think you've been on every committee meeting. If
Yes.
not, you've had the opportunity to watch it. And if anybody wants me to stop talking, wants to jump in, please do. But if you step back and you think about it, and you hear the requests that are coming in, you hear about the funding challenges that we have. We see that the expected increase is about $26 million. How else would this committee look at it and weigh a comment around the need to be cautious about funding greater than what we need to, knowing all the challenges that the county has, but seeing seeing a group receiving funding from the county, nearly 60% of the total budget coming in with a request that, to your point, isn't reality. How else would we put the words in here to say, we just need to be fiscally responsible, we need to make sure we don't overspend, and we need to, kind of stick to the things we do. I mean, we've got roads in this county that are so far behind, it's going to cost us hundreds of millions of dollars to fix, because we're going to have to replace them, because we can't afford the maintenance costs on an annual basis. We've got other facilities. So I'm just struggling how we would soften the language to say, go ahead, Barbara. Thank you for stopping me.
I'm a little uncomfortable with the conversation because none of the other departments have an opportunity to lobby for their department and their needs. And I think we've had considerable conversations over the years about the school budget, and I feel like this is not quite appropriate at this point without other organizations.
Okay, I'm fine not having the conversation.
Well, and this is, hey, and Steve, this is Leonardo. And I think my comment is more so from I guess an observation standpoint. Hopefully, for those that are watching this live now or that will watch it later, that this at the end of the day gets into the body of the report. I mean, the fact is, if we do want to spend more on education, then that also comes with that reality. Then that, to your point that you just said, roads won't get paved. Other things won't get done. And I think as this body, obviously, we have a responsibility to look out for the whole as opposed to just individual parts. But I think this gets to the heart of the matter of the challenges that we're facing as a county. And I think this other piece that, as we've talked about as well, and I think that's documented in the report, is the fact that as a committee or what have you, the fact that we're going to have to end up getting on kind of a speaking circuit, because obviously there are going to be a lot of people that aren't going to necessarily understand truly the conundrum that we're facing right now in terms of what do we fund and how do we fund it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's what I was finishing with is I just don't see how we say anything other than what we said in the report, because what we're trying to do is weigh all of those challenges. I mean, there's a lot of challenges there.
So, Steve, everybody, I didn't understand that, right? So the point I want to make is that MOE, because the student dropped, because it's a special year, that's something I don't agree. I totally understand your perspective. But as the chair of school board, when I'm sitting here, I just want to raise my concerns and let the committee know that my concern.
I appreciate that, Mr. Wu. Thank you. Any other comments or
I was just going to say, Dr. Wu, I would expect you to raise those concerns. So I guess if anything, if you didn't, we may ask alternative questions. So certainly we appreciate you standing up.
Well, I don't hear any other comments or suggestions. Do we want to, recognizing we have a change to make on adding context that we'll make and send out, do we want to have a vote on the report then?
Can I make a couple of clarifying questions about the report? This is Craig Lendenning.
Oh, hey, Craig, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good.
Under 4.3, reserves and one-time funding.
Yeah.
I think it's great about the recommendation for the 50% to build reserves, but the next sentence I'm not sure about. How we've depleted the policy reserve to bridge because of the pandemic. At the end of FY19, the policy reserve had 7.5 million. End of FY20, it has 20 million. And we haven't had anything drawn out of that year to date in FY21.
What page are you on, Craig? Sorry, I'm trying to get there.
Page 13.
Thank you.
Unless there's something I'm missing, Holly.
Hold on, I'm trying to find the paragraph you're in.
That's the first bullet point, second sentence on 4.3.
Yeah, I don't think that sentence has, the problem is saying that recognize the fact that during FY21 budget development, the county did depleted its policy reserve as a one-time kind of a temporary measure, try to mitigate the impact of service that year. The committee just suggests that, because of economic uncertainties, we should increase, the county should replenish and increase its policy reserve. So that's just a general direction or suggestion. I don't see that as a problem.
Oh no, I agree that I agree with the recommendation, but I don't see where it's being depleted. If you look at the
it's been depleted FY21 in 21 budget. So after that, the committee is suggesting to replenish and increase, which actually its basic county is already doing that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So if you want to keep that in the second bullet, I'm wondering about the need for the bullet. Right now, the charter pretty much says that you can only use it for those purposes. And if it's going to be changed to use it for other purposes, then the county executive has to bring legislation to the county council. They need a vote of 4 out of 5 to use it for other purposes. And then you need legislation to actually use it for those purposes. But that hasn't happened as far as I know. So are we trying to correct something that's currently happening? Are we currently using one-time funding for non-recurring expenditures?
No, I think what we were trying to say there, Craig, is...
Oh, for recurring.
Yeah. No, I think what we were trying to say there is there an opportunity when we're looking at the existing capital that's happening without looking at new capital projects? I mean, if there's existing capital projects that we could use some of those monies to not issue debt that's been previously authorized or something like that. It's more of a recommendation that we look at all options when we're doing that. I agree with you that typically we've well, one, like you said, we can't put it into recurring, but maybe it's kind of saying the same thing when you call it pay-go or reduced debt burden. It's just a reminder that we don't want to issue debt. I think there's just a push to not do more debt.
I mean, I think the recommendation's great, but as a reader, it was sounding like we were slapping the county's hand, the budget office and administration, for using money the way they should, funding they shouldn't be using it for.
No, Craig, actually, there's one piece of technical clarification. The one-time funding here, if you look at the content, it said not just the fund balance, it's also like if you have one-time bump from
Right.
capital gains or other things, those like not repeated every year, then you shouldn't spend this on payroll, other things that's going to have ongoing costs on that. So it's a little bit beyond what the charter require, which the charters mostly just talk about reserve use. And also the other point I think Steve tried to make is also talk about, if you do have one-time cash there, you can maybe use it to reduce debt or offset other liabilities there. So that's just a little bit more expansion than only talk about charter part.
Okay, so I understand you're talking about like the what we consider the one-time increase in income taxes that we got this year, not to
Right.
go away and spend it on increasing. Right. Okay, all right, thanks.
No problem.
Thank you.
Any other comments or suggestions? So with the change we'll make around context, do we have a motion to approve the report?
I'll move that we approve the report with the changes upon.
I'll second this, Leonardo.
Very good. I guess I'll do or any opposed. Since we're on virtual, it's probably easier to do that. Very good. I think we've finished this up. We'll send around the final revision to everybody in the next day or so. And I want to thank everybody for their help getting to this point. It's been an enjoyable journey, and I've appreciated the dialogue. Holly, anything you want to add?
Steve, thank you very much. I just want to take the opportunity to thank everybody for the engagement. It's really great dialogue, a lot of informative and insight for information and recommendation, very thoughtful put into this report. And also, I also want to thank our guest speakers who provide a lot of good information throughout the sessions there, and also our technical support people as well as the interpreter who have been kind of accompany us throughout this journey. And thank you all very much. It's really a great pleasure and really an honor to work with all of you. Thank you. And Steve, thank you so much for your leadership.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks, Holly.
Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.